Welcome to the LA Business Podcast, your destination to hear stories of how businesses grow and scale. I'm Robert Brill, CEO of BrillMedia.co and the host of this podcast. Now, let's jump right into this week's interview. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the LA Business Podcast. Today our guest is Adrian Savage. Adrian, thanks for being here. Adrian is the founder of Deliverability Dashboard. And Deliverability Dashboard helps you easily measure at your email delivery and engagement, giving you the power to fix any deliverability issue quickly. So Adrian, tell us a little bit about how you started with this business, why you created it, and what Delivery Dashboard actually does.
So I've been a geek since I was about 7 years old. My dad brought one of the original Apple II computers home. I ended up teaching him how to use the thing. So that was kind of the geek side. And then it's probably about 10 years ago now, things changed in my life. I quit my job and I started to learn all about marketing. Put marketing and geekery together and the whole online marketing automation comes around. And I started learning platforms like Infusionsoft and ActiveCampaign, MailChimp, things like that. And one of the key challenges that so many of my clients had was they were sending their emails out and the emails were going to people's spam folders. They weren't getting as many people opening them as they wanted. So that set me off on a bit of a challenge because I like solving problems. And I started to really get under the skin of how you could get more emails into the inbox and fewer emails into the spam folder. And as time went on, I realized that I was actually having much more fun and having much more success helping people solve that one problem than just trying to be another marketing guy. Because let's face it, there's lots of marketing guys around the world. There aren't that many people that specialize in the whole email deliverability space. So I got into that, started writing bits of software, and that's how Deliverability Dashboard came about, because I realized that a lot of people didn't understand what the most important things were that determine whether or not you're going to make it into the inbox or the spam folder. And a lot of it is down to how people's behavior is, how they manage their emails. So I started writing a set of reports and tools and things like that to start analyzing that and use it as a way of explaining to people why they needed to change their sending habits. Because there's a big fear of loss. Everyone's always worried about how big their email list is, how many people are they sending their emails to. And it's only once you start to really get into the detail that you realize it's actually a lot more about quality and a lot less about quantity. And I had to have ways of explaining to people why it was so important. And that's how the software started. And then since then, it's kind of taken on a life of its own, because a lot of people have started sharing just links to the software and saying, hey, if you want to check out your email, check the software. So now, although I used to be doing a lot of consulting, most of the time now I'm actually focusing on just adding extra features to the software, helping it support more different platforms. So my dream, I guess, is to help more than 1 million people get their emails into the inbox so they can be heard more. And one of the ways to do that is to support as many different email platforms as possible. So that's kind of what I'm working on now, as well as just helping people share the message like I'm doing today to explain exactly what you can do, what anyone who's sending marketing emails can do to just massively increase the chances of those emails going into the inbox.
So who is this for? Is this for agency? Is this for the small business, large enterprise business? Who can use this tool?
So it's more the small to medium business at the moment. We haven't started supporting too many enterprise bits of software yet. So if you're using something like Pardo or Salesforce, something like that, then that isn't there. But we are starting to support things like Maripost and some of the other big platforms. But it's more anyone who's using something like Keep or MailChimp, ActiveCampaign. What else? We've got HubSpot, Constant Contact. There's a few different platforms like that we're supporting, and those are the ones we're adding to all the time. And we've got a specific way of helping agencies so they can help lots of their customers, but this is really aimed at just any small business that's using one of those platforms and they've got some kind of email list. So pretty much anyone who's using email to share their message with their audience, then this can probably help them.
And what does your tool actually do? Like if I have MailChimp or we use HubSpot, right? And we send emails regularly. I imagine there's an API connection of some sort. What does your tool do that HubSpot or MailChimp isn't currently doing?
So the big thing that a lot of people still aren't really clear on is how much the email world has changed in recent years. So now the biggest thing that determines what your reputation is going to be, which is how Google and Microsoft and other mailbox providers decide if your mails go to spam or to the inbox, is they're looking at how much of your audience is opening the emails that you send out, how many of them are engaged, how many of them aren't engaged. And interestingly, none of the major mail platforms yet make it that easy to see kind of from a helicopter view how well your engagement looks, what proportion of your audience has opened something in the last 30 days or the last 90 days or whatever. So what the dashboard does is it opens an API connection, like you said, and it just downloads the minimum information it needs from, let's say, HubSpot as an example, and it'll just look at all of the contacts in your database, and it'll say, right, how many people have been sent something in the last 30 days? What percentage of those have opened at least one email? And then based on that and a few other bits of secret sauce we've got, then it comes up with a really simple email health score where 0 is really bad, 100 is really good. And most people, they start off somewhere in the middle, and then we can share a few hints and tips along the way as to how you can increase that score as you go. And pretty much the higher your score, then the greater the likelihood is that you're going to have a good domain reputation, and the greater the likelihood that you're going to get the emails more into the inbox.
So that's really interesting. So can't you use, like, when we send emails to HubSpot, or through HubSpot, we get insights about how many people clicked, which links they clicked on. What types of insights? I'm all about insights. I think insights are the greatest thing, like, that an agency can deploy for its clients. Sure. What types of insights do you get, right? We send, and I'll give you just a little bit of a framework. We send kind of like 2 types of emails. One type of email is when someone, it's a lead generation, right? Like someone wants to download our lead generation guide, and they signed up, and they're going to get an email that says, hey, Adrian, here's your lead generation guide that you just signed up for. And the second type of email is a marketing email. If someone answers, when we run ads, we ask questions like, what is your biggest marketing challenge? And if someone says, well, social media is my biggest marketing challenge, we write an email stream that identifies like what you should know about social media so that it becomes less of a challenge and more of an opportunity for you. And those I would characterize as marketing emails.
Yep.
You didn't ask for it, but you consented to get emails from us. So how do you improve deliverability on those?
So the main thing is, because, like you said, HubSpot gives you some great insights into how each individual workflow you've got, how each individual campaign, each automation, whatever, because each platform has a slightly different name for it. It will tell you how well those individual emails, those streams are that you're sending out. But what is a bit more difficult to do is just take that big picture view of, let's say, everyone in your database in the last 30 days, how many of those have opened at least one thing? Because what you need to do to really maximize your chances of getting into the inbox is you need to be only focusing on sending more emails to the people that are continuing to open from you. So one of the biggest mistakes a lot of people make is they will put people into these marketing streams, but they might be sending the same stuff out, for a year or longer. And if someone has switched off and they haven't unsubscribed, but they've just started ignoring you a month in, then every single person you're mailing to like that is giving Google and Microsoft and other people more ammunition to say, hey, this email can't be that good because no one's opening it. So what the dashboard is doing in the health check is saying, okay, let's work out just across all the different emails you've sent, what proportion of people are opening something. And if you're managing your email list really well, then you can't compare open rates, because one person's open rate will be different to someone else's, because it depends on whether you're sending to your engaged audience or everyone or whatever. So it's like my open rates are typically 30, 40, sometimes 50%, because I'm only sending to people that have opened recently. Someone else might have even better emails than me, because I'm not the best copywriter in the world. But because they're sending to their entire list, including maybe they might have 10,000 people on there that have never opened anything for a year or more, their open rate could be down at 10%. So you can't compare that way. But what we can do is we can say, let's look at just how many people have engaged, how many people haven't engaged. And that's the basis behind the scoring that we then use to say, here's how you can improve your performance by sending only to this subset of people here rather than everybody. And then the other thing, and this is probably a more important insight that we look at, is we'll look specifically at all the new contacts that have been added in the last 30 days. And assuming that most people add new people onto the mailing list either by investing a lot of time or investing a lot of money in growing their audience, then this is one of the insights that really matters. Because let's say you add 1,000 people onto your email list in a month. Now, if only 40 or 50% of those people are opening those emails, effectively you're wasting half of your effort. And a lot of people, when they're doing their marketing, if they're not setting everything else right up, if they're not managing the engagement to their entire audience, then they'll find that the new contacts have only got a 40 to 50% chance of engaging. Whereas if you set everything up correctly, then you might find that's more like 80%. So just by showing people how to manage their engagement across the board and then looking at this insight into how the new contacts are behaving, then we can potentially double people's return on their marketing investment, because we can get so many more of those people that sign up to actually open those emails. So that's one of the key insights that we're looking at, is just to say, how can we get the absolute most out of all of these new contacts that people are paying a lot of dollars and spending a lot of time trying to build their email list.
So does your platform identify the individual record or the individual users that are opening up the emails?
So we're not going to that level of detail from a reporting point of view. We're just getting the kind of the aggregate numbers, if that makes sense. But that way, then it gives people the insight, so they can go back to their marketing platform and say, right, I'm going to search for all these people that haven't opened anything for a year or longer, and probably unsubscribe those, and maybe search for all the people that haven't opened anything between, say, 90 days ago and maybe 12 months ago, and say, right, I'm going to maybe send these people a last chance email and say, hey, do you still want to hear from me? And if they still don't reply at that point, you might unsubscribe them. And then the Defender tool that I've got, that's an extension to the dashboard, if you've got a platform that can't automatically find all of these engaged people, then it will actually help you identify those, so you can send the mails out to them as well. But the main focus really is just helping people get a handle on how good their engagement management is right now. And the better we can help them make that, then the more successful they're going to be.
So that's fascinating. And how long has this tool been in existence?
So the first version of it saw the light of day probably about 3 years ago, but it's only in the last probably 18 months or so that I really realized how useful it could be, and it's only probably in the last 12 months that I've really been starting to market this. So this is one of the reasons why it's still one of the best kept secrets out there. We've got maybe 1,500 users at the moment. I'm looking to really grow that, because the main part of the dashboard itself, there's no charge for using it, and it's just my real passion is to get as many people using this as possible, because I want to educate people. They need to understand how you can't just manage emails the way you used to. You can no longer just build a massive list and mail the hell out of it. You've got to actually be a little bit more sensible with what you do. And the beauty of the dashboard and the health check is it just makes it easy to understand why and how you can make things better.
And tell us, one part of the mission for this podcast is to help other business owners and senior executives learn how to grow and scale their business. So, you're definitely fulfilling on that with just the nature of the product, understanding more about how to get emails to more people it's almost like saying no is less is more, basically, is what your system kind of like identifies for us, which is really interesting. And quality over quantity is another kind of like component that I think we hear a lot about, but this is actually a way to identify those people. How do you market this tool? Obviously, I would look at this podcast as one part of marketing. So you're clearly doing some PR and publicity. Tell us about how you grow and scale, because this is, while it's a B2B product, it has a lot of similarities to a consumer-facing product, because it's a large audience, it's easy to buy, it's completely autonomous in how it works. You don't need to sell one-to-one. So it's also about how you're marketing this product.
Yeah. And it's an interesting one, because we've tried a number of different tactics, and the ones that you would expect might work quite well haven't been so good. We've tried all kinds of Facebook ads, things like that, where we're reaching out to all the people that use, things like MailChimp and Keep and ActiveCampaign and so on. And they haven't worked particularly well. What we found has been more successful has just been a lot more kind of word of mouth. So we've done a bit of the kind of Dropbox strategy, where we haven't got quite the incentive that Dropbox uses, where they say, hey, share this and we'll give you some more space. But we're trying to incentivize people just to share the link to the platform. And we're working a lot with agencies and consultants and people like that, where they can actually get their clients to use it and educate them that way. So those have actually been the most successful ways to date. We're always looking at other ways of doing lead gen, because it is, I was surprised how we've worked with a couple of different people on Facebook ads and things like that, and it's consistently not the best way. We're getting a reasonable click-through rate, but then people just don't want to sign up for the platform. So it's a very, very interesting one. And I think this is so far we've found that if I've been doing kind of webinars for other people who've got a suitable audience, or going on podcasts, things like that, that's actually been one of the most successful so far, because I guess it's giving people a bit of a chance to understand why it's important. Because if you just see some kind of ad and then just go to a landing page, there's probably not enough reason at that point to say for people to realize, hey, I really need to try this out. Because I think the thing with email deliverability is most people don't realize that they might have a problem. Some people, they know about it because they'll either be getting a poor open rate, or they think it should be better, or people are contacting them and say, hey, your email's going to spam. But I think most people, they might say, hey, I'm getting a 15% open rate, I'm getting a 20% open rate, I'm okay with that. And people don't know that they could be getting a 40 or a 50% open rate if they're actually managing things a bit tighter.
That's really interesting. How much do you charge for deliverability dashboard?
So the dashboard itself is free. At the moment, the only thing that we're charging for is the Defender tool, which helps you actually identify those unengaged contacts. And that's $59 a month for the basic version. And I think this is the interesting thing. At the moment, we don't have that many people using that platform, but it's kind of growing. It's growing gently every single month. And the really cool thing that I've noticed so far is out of all the people we've had sign up, we've had 2 cancellations. And in both cases, the only reason they cancelled is because they stopped using the marketing platform and they were going to something else that we couldn't support. So we know we've got a great product and it's helping people. And it's just getting to that point where we can just get that critical mass, because at the moment, there's no other tool like this out there. There's all these other bigger tools, things like there's Send Forensics, there's 250 OK, there's Validity, and there's all these other different email deliverability tools. But no one as yet has started reporting on engagement and helping people find engaged contacts the way that the deliverability dashboard and Defender does. So I think there's lots of potential here, and then we are really just still at the tip of the iceberg point at the moment.
So it sounds like from the perspective of marketing, you're an evangelist. You first need to educate the marketplace about why this is a problem, why we're solving a problem. Yeah, the challenge for your product is you're selling a solution to a problem that most people don't realize they have.
Absolutely.
And so a lot of that has to be storytelling, and it's long form.
Yeah, very much. So I think the most successful ways of educating so far have been where I've shared success stories about the platform, because luckily there's a few well-known marketers and influencers that are using the platform now, and we're reaching the point where they're nearly ready to say, hey, when I started, this is where I was at, we've grown to get our open rates up to here, we're getting this many more sales and so on. So then once I've got a few really good case studies like that, it becomes much easier to share how it can make an impact for people and how they can see how that will actually apply to them.
Tell us about, I'm looking at your LinkedIn profile. I see a variety. I mean, you've been working for a long freaking time. Holy cow. But your first job, I don't know if it was your first one, but your first one on LinkedIn was software specialist at Xerox in 1993.
Yeah, that was the first one. That's a long time ago now.
Yeah. What are some of the things you've learned along the way as you've struck out on your own? I mean, it looks like 2015, you are the founder and head of development for WeDeliver.email.
Yeah.
Is that related to the deliverability dashboard?
Yeah, that was it. So it's now a little offshoot to the deliverability dashboard, but that was the first bit of software that I created, because back at that time, then they didn't really care about reputation. The only thing that mattered was what server you were sending your emails from. And if you're sending from a platform, and sometimes, even MailChimp used to have problems with their reputation sometimes. So what we did was it allowed people to reroute their emails via another server that had a better reputation and get more mails into the inbox that way. So that was kind of my first foray into it. I started doing the whole email marketing thing and consulting probably about 10 years ago now. And I guess the biggest lesson that I've learned is that I can't do all this stuff on my own. And one of the most difficult words in the entrepreneur's vocabulary is help. So I think once I managed to get a bit of humility and realize that it was okay to go and find other people that could help me, then that made a huge difference, because you can't do all this stuff on your own. And then the second lesson I quickly learned after that was, if you get too many people helping and you overstretch, then suddenly you're spending more money than you're bringing in, and that's a problem as well. So it's always a balancing act. But I I've made enough mistakes, I've failed enough times along the way that I'm not afraid to screw something up, because if you screw something up, you're going to learn from it, you're going to do it better the next time. So I think that's the biggest thing it's taught me, is that, stop being afraid of messing something up, because things will go wrong, but it will work out okay in the end.
Yeah, I want to second that point. When I started giving up control of the day-to-day operational components of my business, it grew. It wasn't a straight line up, but it was a growth. Over time, there was growth. I'm an entrepreneurs group called EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, and one of the things that was mentioned at one point was, the people who work for you are going to do the job 80% of the quality, more or less, that you will do it, right? And that's amazing. 80% is fan-freaking-tastic, because that means I can clone myself in a lot of ways with only a 20% loss. And that's great. And the other component of that is process, right? When I work with people, like, the more there's process, the better it is. Do you, like, when you think about your business, what did 2020 do for your organization? Like, how did COVID, I don't know how COVID impacts this type of business. I'd like to know more about that.
Yeah, it was interesting, because I'm also a reseller of some of the different marketing platforms from when I was a consultant. I noticed that some of my clients that were just paying me to use email marketing platforms, they had to cancel because suddenly they were out of business. So that side of things dropped a bit. But at the same time, then, I wasn't quite as successful as Zoom, should we say, because obviously when the pandemic happened and suddenly everyone went online, Zoom suddenly went like that. Right. And at the same time, because businesses had to go online more people were using email. So a lot of the existing clients I had, they were already pretty successful from an online perspective, because they were doing email marketing, and that was what I was helping them with. So I didn't lose that many clients that way, which was good, and started to get a few new clients trickle through as well as time went on. So June last year was quite a good month, because I launched a mastermind group and a few things like that. So I was able to just cater for a specific group of people that needed help. And then since then, go back to focusing on the software, and it's just been gently growing ever since. So I think, I've been very fortunate to be in a particular industry vertical where the whole COVID thing hasn't affected it that much. But at the same time, I noticed that people are less likely to spend a lot of money. So I think the fact that the Defender software is a reasonable price, it's not it's just like less than the cost of a meal every month, then people aren't going to think too much about that. Whereas if I've been asking people for like $20,000 for something, then suddenly people were being a lot more cautious about the big spend. So I think from that perspective, I've been pretty lucky.
And what does 2021 look like for you? Are there development milestones with the software? Do you amp up your marketing? Like, are you in London?
So I'm a bit north of London. I've got the London background behind me, because for some reason, particularly if I'm speaking to someone in America, they love the British pictures. So.
Well, it looks really great with your red shirt too. It matches.
Yeah,
you created the whole vibe.
No, it's really cool. So yeah, it's interesting. You've pretty much nailed it, actually, because there are two main things for this year. The first thing is just getting more platforms supported. So right now we're working on MailerLite, we're working on Maripost, we're working on Klaviyo, which is coming, and a lot of people use that for e-commerce marketing. Yeah. And then a few other bells and whistles. It's like Google have a tool called Postmaster Tools, and you can use that to actually monitor your email reputation as far as Google's concerned. Mm-hmm. But at the moment, you have to log in and check that all the time. So what we're doing is we're finding a way of automating that. So if someone's Google reputation suddenly drops, then we're actually going to be able to start notifying people pretty much instantly when that happens. So that's extra feature we're adding. And then it is going to be about the whole marketing and just getting the message out there so much more widely, because I think, there's, as well as the software itself, I do a lot of kind of training education. I've got a 4-step process call it the RACE method, where RACE is reputation, authentication, content, and engagement. And I talk a lot about those 4 things. They're going to be how you can actually avoid the spam folder, double your open rates, be heard more by your audience. And then the tool obviously is a way of actually supporting people and help them do that. So a lot around education, because that's probably the best way of getting the awareness up. And once the awareness is up, then more people will understand how Deliverability Dashboard can help them.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like, from the marketing perspective, you're in the storytelling mode. Right? Yeah. Like it has to be that, and it has to be long form. Have you looked at Clubhouse?
I have. It's an interesting one because I've seen people that I know, because when I first got into the whole online marketing space 10 years ago, then, the people I worked with were like kind of the UK's equivalent of Tony Robbins and people like that. So I've got all these kind of, people helpers and personal development people in my network. And I'm seeing them go onto Clubhouse and spending hours on there and getting, in some cases, they're getting some really good results. And I think the ones that I've seen that are successful, they've invested a lot of their life in it. And right now, because I'm still too much of the talent and the development and the marketing and the sales,
Right.
I haven't got the time yet to invest in Clubhouse. But
It's
I can
crazy,
see
man.
huge potential.
Clubhouse is ridiculous. I mean, we're revamping our marketing strategy right now, and I think my general perspective on Clubhouse is, if you know how to talk and you're inspiring and you can be valuable to a variety of people, Clubhouse is a platform that should be at the very least considered.
Yeah.
If you don't know how to talk and you're a better writer or you're better at animation, stuff like that, then Clubhouse. What's interesting, Clubhouse could still be a great place to meet people. Like, I met a copywriter on Clubhouse and she's doing work for us. I met a designer, actually not through Clubhouse. So I'll just focus on the copywriter. But like, it's fantastic. Like, there are really smart people doing a lot of interesting things, and the connections that are facilitated are dramatic if you're there, and if you're there with the right mindset, which most people are. Like, no, I'm sure there are rooms where people are trying to like monetize aggressively, but there's like rooms for crypto and NFT and all.
It's interesting because the few times I've been in there, then everyone is leading with value. That's the lovely thing about Clubhouse, is it's not become some big pitch fest. It's become people are actually sharing really cool content and engaging with people. And like you say, talking about storytelling, that people just share bits of their story and how that is relevant to the people in the room.
And then there's the drama starters, which are marginally entertaining to listen to. Well, cool. So tell us, in the last few minutes here, Adrian, tell us the website and how people can find you.
Okay, so the main website is deliverabilitydashboard.com, and you can sign up for the health check there. And the other really cool resource that I've created is a checklist that I call the Race Method Checklist, and that covers the 4 key areas in a little bit of detail so that you can understand what the really important things you can do to very quickly transform your email performance. And you can grab the checklist at deliverabilitydashboard.com/checklist.
deliverabilitydashboard.com/checklist.
Got it.
Awesome. Well, Adrian, thank you so much for being with us today. I really enjoyed this conversation. I'll check out the software after we get off this podcast. Thanks for being our guest today.
It's a pleasure. Thanks so much for having me on.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the LA Business Podcast. If you like what we're doing on this podcast, please consider subscribing on Apple or Google Play, leaving a 5-star review, and sharing with your friends. If you have any questions, comments, or recommendations for a guest you'd like to hear on this podcast, please email me, robert@brillmedia.co. Thank you. Have a fantastic day.